Welcome to Frost Sessions, the Frost School of Music's official podcast. On this week's episode, the most versatile performer, writer, recording artist, educator, and editor, Dr. Laura Sherman, interviews performer and American Broadway producer, director, and Samaritan, Richard J. Alexander. In this insightful conversation, Laura and Richard explore their work with Barbra Streisand, the path to performance and directing professionally, and the world of theater and Broadway. Thank you for joining us today, and remember to stay tuned to Frost Sessions.
Hello, and welcome to the Frost Sessions, a podcast about music, which is produced by the Frost School of Music, University of Miami. My name is Laura Sherman, and I am the lecturer in harp and music theory at the Frost School of Music. It's an honor and a pleasure to be the host of today's show. Before I arrived into Miami just over a year ago to teach at the Frost School, I was a professional harpist in New York City for 35 years, doing an assortment of really fun things, including Broadway shows, solo, chamber orchestra work, and a lot of recording and touring. It was during my 4 tours with pop legend Barbra Streisand that I had the distinct pleasure to work with her longtime director, Richard J. Alexander, who is our guest on today's show. Richard J. Alexander has worked with many of the great artists in the world and recently celebrated his 45th year in show business. He has been dubbed the Diva Whisperer, and in addition to collaborating with Miss Streisand for the last 20 years, he has worked with such diverse artists as Broadway stars Kristin Chenoweth, Bette Midler, Bernadette Peters, Norm Lewis, Brian Stokes Mitchell, pop singer Ricky Martin, songwriter Desmond Child, jazz trumpeter Chris Bodie, opera singer Deborah Voigt, and many, many more. After 40 years of living and working in New York and LA, he has relocated to Miami Beach, where he currently resides and is an active member in the local art scene. Welcome, Richard.
Hi, it's nice to be here. Thanks.
Oh, my pleasure.
Even I'm impressed.
As you should be.
Yeah,
in fact, you have mastered just about every facet of show business.
I forget what, I've been doing a lot of interviews lately. I did Jim Caruso's cast print, and you forget what you do. And then sometimes I'll go like, oh my God, like I did that, or an album, or I don't know. It's a very weird thing. Just now, and during the pandemic, when we've had a lot of time to be with ourselves and think, I'm just realizing my career, the impact, I've been overblessed. A lot of people call it lucky, but there's no luck involved. Like I had the goods, but it's just how to get in there, like even speaking to your class the other day, yes. Which by the way, those are a great group of students. About half a dozen of them wrote to me privately. Aww. And I'm going to get to all of them. I'm going to give them each a half an hour of my time privately on the phone because, they all seemed really, they're very focused, the ones that wrote to me and know what they want to do. And we are in the middle of a pandemic. So I'm all about education. My dad was an educator and also helping because they're the future. And I can't even imagine, like not having the college experience that you're supposed to have in the social life and all of that. And the, teamwork and the, whether you're an orchestra, whether you're a drama group, whether you're a singing group, it's unfathomable to me that they're going through this. But I also think that the adversarial part of it is going to make them do great things. I really actually believe that. Like I was crying all the time during the class of 2020, all the drive-by graduations and stuff.
Yeah.
And I think the class of 2020 is going to do great things.
Yeah, absolutely. And I should fill our listeners in on what you did. You very generously volunteered to attend my music theory class for musical theater majors here at the Frost School of Music and speak to them. And you gave them such encouragement and inspiration. And as you mentioned, you also shared your personal email address.
But with me, it's not lip service. Like if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it. Because one of the things I resent about my education is that I went to a state school in upstate New York that shall go nameless, and they try to take credit for your career and stuff. It doesn't matter where you go to school. It's what you do with the education and the training you've gotten. And so when you look at where you are right now, teaching, you've actually done it. There's so much value in that for students. So I went to school in a time in the 70s in college where people went from school to graduate school to teaching, and they never did anything. They weren't out there in the world. So the reality check, and I felt so unprepared when I hit the streets up against Yale and Carnegie Mellon and listen, U of M and CCM and all, they weren't even huge yet. It was really the Carnegie Mellon and the Yale. And it took me a couple of years and I was pissed off. I was really angry. that I was not prepared
Wow.
to enter my career choice. And it took me a little bit of thing. And now, like I said, my drive was enormous, and so that's what you do. But, just like I told the kids in your class, people always go, do you have advice? I don't really, because since the time of contests and, the internet and stuff like that, training still rules. It still rules. It's going to separate the men from the boys. Do you know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
And the longevity and the long term. But I believe in young people. And as you know, I've discovered a lot of young people and, put them on stages, and whether it's Leah Michelle or bringing Ricky Martin to Broadway, and then taking him to Desmond Child and Live in La Vida Loca was more, it's all circuitry, and it's who you know and who you meet, you know what I mean? And as you know, we've traveled, 4 big, huge tours with Barbra, and, when I look at the people that I've been allowed to meet and the places in the world and, just what has been presented, I even think about Paris when Michel Legrand and who was with Michel Legrand that night? Another great French. It wasn't Gilbert Picot. It was somebody, I can't remember. But anyway, just, and then all of a sudden I'll listen to something and I'll go, oh my God, I met them.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's pretty crazy,
It is, yeah. Very fortunate. So in addition to your advocacy, which I want to talk about a little bit later as well.
Okay.
Can you get us started, get us oriented? Because if I could just share, I love how you describe yourself on Facebook. Okay. You said, quote, I'm a guy who fell in love with theater as a kid, growing up in a really small town. And then you use the hashtag dreams come true.
Yeah.
I mean, that is inspirational. And,
I loved
tell us
my
about
growing up, but I grew up in a little shitbox town. I call it, they get upset with that, but I mean, it's just a phrase. It's not that I hated it. I didn't know anything else, but I knew I had to get out. And we had a public library down the hill. And so they had, we had a church group that my dad was big with the church group, and he was a CPA. And he would help them count the tickets to the Broadway musical, the high school musical, long before high school musicals were trendy. And they had a full orchestra at a high school level. And I saw Bye Bye Birdie, and the rest is history. It was nuts. The one hair I had on my arm at 10, stood up wildly. And I started studying musicals, and the library would call me, Dickie, we've got a new show. And I'd go, what is it? And they go, Golden Rainbow. I go, who's in it? They go, Stephen Eady. And I'd run down the hill, and I'd put on those big ass headphones, and I would listen. And I know every word to everything. The weird thing is I learned some of my show tunes backwards, through Stephen Eady. So when I played J. Pierpont Finch and How to Succeed in my sophomore year, and I heard, you have the cool, clear eyes of a seeker of wisdom and truth. I knew it from Stephen Eady's swing. That is culture, dear. That rings. And those, were their made up lyrics. So I'm there he goes, Richard, what are you singing? What? That's not in the show.
That's
so
great.
All of that. And, when I saw Applause on Broadway, I didn't know all about Eve. When I saw Promises, Promises, I didn't know The Apartment. So I actually lived these musicals. So when Eve turned out to be a bitch, I'm the only person in the audience going, they're looking at me what's with him, or so, it's a sort of messed up, messy education for me. But my dad saw how much I loved it, and he started buying the Sunday New York Times for me. So I'd be pour through that art. So they're, Ma, look, the Andrews sisters are in a musical called Over Here. Let's go to New York. And my parents would bring me to New York. And, my dad always said it was important to be passionate about something. I was one of 5 children. Everybody else went into legal, medicine, accounting, IBM, all that. And I was the only freak. But he saw, and, I had terrible grades in high school, terrible. I failed algebra 3 times.
Oh, no.
And when I said to the algebra teacher, I go, what does this have to do with show business? I'm going into show business. And she would and go, don't be ridiculous. And I went home and I cried, and I told my dad got in the car and he went down there and he goes, you don't kill my kids' dreams.
Oh,
and
wow.
I don't even remember how I finally passed algebra, because you couldn't do the next, because there were Regents exams in New York State and blah, blah, blah. So it was all there, but I had terrible grades. I got turned down by every college in America.
Wow.
And my dad did a very smart thing. This is the outskirts of Syracuse. So he called Oswego, SUNY Oswego, and he invited the chairman and co-chairman of the drama department to come see me in my high school musical. I was playing Joe Hardy and Damn Yankees, which I can't even fathom, but yes, I had the lead. So anyway, I think they took me for a semester on enthusiasm. And then once you get into your passion area and you're studying Greek theater and, music and, everything, I thrived. I got out of school in 3 years. I made Dean's List. I got scholarships, blah, blah, blah. But it's just a question of finding your tribe. And the interesting thing was I was studying theater, but it was the height of avant-garde, Ionesco, Genet. And I'm like, where are the musicals? Where are the musicals? Like, I wanted to work on Broadway, you know what I mean? So they all thought I was nuts. So I took my first singing course, and you know, you have your 24 arias book that everybody walks in with. And when the final comes, I go, do we have to sing from the aria book, or can I sing a show tune? She goes, you can sing whatever you want. So I sang, why can't I fall in love like another man? You know, and she flunked me. And
oh no!
I was really, really pissed, because if she wanted the aria book, you know, I could have done the danza fanchula mio cantar, you know, I would have done it, but she told me. So I went to the head of the department. He was a guy named Dr. James Soluri, and I didn't really know the music department. And I said, look, this is messed up. You know, I'm going to work on Broadway. And, you know, I said, and she told me I could sing a show tune, and she's mad, and she took this out of me. So I sang the song for him. He changed it to an A. He offered me state singers. But in that meeting in his office, the head of the department, he said to me, he goes, wow, he goes, you could have a career. He said those words. He didn't say you could get an A+. He didn't say you could make Dean's List. He said you could have a career. Well, that I understood.
Yes.
And he became my hero and my salvation in the music department. And I did the theater, but I just did it with my teeth grit, you know, until I was a sophomore and I could start directing musicals. And then I was in musicals, and I went away and did summer stock, got my equity card. And so I was an unstoppable train in a lot of ways, which is a parallel that I totally relate to with Barbra. Do you know what I mean? It's that fire in your belly. It's the hunger. You know, like when she was in Brooklyn, just a bridge was separating her from Oz that she could see on the Ed Sullivan Show. So once you know it exists, like I would watch the Tonight Show, I go, Ma, can I stay up late tonight? Danny Fortis is going to be on from Minnie's Boys. He's my age. So he sang Mama a Rainbow, and I'm sitting there crying, go, he's my age. He's my age. And he's on Broadway. You know, you hear all this about I never saw myself. Well, I saw myself, and nothing was going to stop me. And so that's sort of it. So, you know, I was an actor and a singer and a dancer, and I was pretty good, and I worked, you know what I mean? But then opportunities started presenting themselves. And by the time I got into the original cast of Amadeus, which was after Zoot Suit and after movies like Saturday Night Fever and The Warriors and all that crap, and soap operas and commercials, there was an opportunity. And, you know, I was friends with Tommy Tune. And back then there wasn't like when one door opens, another one, like a lot of these phrases weren't around, networking, all these words. But he goes, Richard J., you have to understand when a window opens and you climb through it, because he told me after he won a Tony for Seesaw, he couldn't get arrested till he directed the club. So I started directing with the blessing of William Morris, the National Theatre of Great Britain, Sir Peter Hall, Peter Schaffer, and I did the tours of Amadeus. That's how Cameron McIntosh found me. And the rest is sort of history, but it's a glorious history.
Yeah.
And then my life changed again when Bernadette Peters asked me to do Carnegie Hall. My whole life changed after that concert.
Wow.
There was so much riding on it. It was one night only. The New York Times wanted to come and review. We said yes. We got an album deal, you know, with Angel, the one with the arms outstretched, you know, Bernadette Peters live at Carnegie Hall, Sondheim, etc. We got Grammy nominated. And everybody that just came chasing me. And then the second part of that was when Polly Bergen came out of retirement at 70. I did that act because she'd been missing from show business for like 30 years. And she says to me in the lunch, I was thinking about doing an evening of love songs. And I'm like, why? Are you in love? And she wanted to smack me, I could tell. But we did her life, and it was a life force. And we were on the cover of the New York Times, not the arts section. And that changed my trajectory also. So, you know, it's just very interesting. Like the right job can just change people's perception of you and your abilities. And by the way, it's not that I think I'm all that. I could easily fail. Like my track record is so good in this. I always go, look, or I could be wrong. But when you're working with an artist, you want a negotiation, you want a collaboration, and you do it together. So if you're going to say yes to me, don't mean we'll see or maybe. That's what Stephen Sondheim writes. Don't leave me halfway through the wood. We're doing this together, and you got to commit. And whether you're Brian Stokes Mitchell, I've had my moments with all of them, like that moment, that crushing confrontational moment, you know, which is, it's not fighting. It's about, you know, committing to each other and being artistically sound. Like I didn't do this alone. So I've had a really, you know, I've had more than my share of blessings, and I've worked with the greatest people in the world. And I only have a couple of, you know, like that was a terrible experience kind of things, but that's just because, you know, it's just because I don't need to go into it, but, you know, but for the most part, they've all been fantastic. And of course, Barbara's my girl. And, I've admired her since I was 10 years old, and I didn't even understand the dropped A in the name or the sounds she could make. And so, I think the first time I was in the room with her, it just like, to my very core, working with Bette Midler and being on tour, and she sings Am I Blue, sorry, Skylark. And I'm sitting there in the arena going, oh my God, sitting on a toolbox out by the sound booth going like, oh my God. I used to get stoned to that album, The Divine Mishap,
Wow.
and do Boogie Woogie Bugle Boy and mime it with my friends in the dorm hall. So dreams do come true. Right. And it doesn't matter where you grew up or whatever, but people will shit on your dreams. They really will. I was made lots of fun of. There weren't words like bullying back then. And so I became what I was supposed to become. And it's because of the encouragement from particular teachers, particular instructors, and, my dad. And of course I got my humor from my mom, but they were at everything I did, you know what I mean? And so proud. Yeah. And so it's a remarkable life. I know you're a big fan of Zoot Suit, my Broadway debut. You're fascinated by it. But what's interesting about Zoot Suit that I did, that was my Broadway debut in 1978. That was at the Winter Garden where Barbra did Funny Girl, and where I saw my first Broadway show on Broadway, which was Mame with Angela Lansbury, B. Arthur, Jane Cannell. And I never saw such glamour. Like, oh, sorry, that's my breakfast. My tongue was hanging out, from the front of the mezzanine. And so after I did Zoot Suit, and there was a party at Sardi's, and my parents came down, and I got them a limousine and everything, and I thought I can die now. Well, of course, you don't actually mean it, because I never could have comprehended what was to follow. Never. But I somehow, in my bedroom, in my childhood bedroom downstairs, I had, it wasn't like a wish wall, like these people have altars, or what do they call these things, these wish boards, or whatever they call them.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about, yeah.
But I had pictures of, Diana Ross and Liza Minnelli and Barbara. I had a whole Barbara wall, and Bernadette Peters and Bette Midler. I don't know, maybe at night something was going on while I was sleeping and in my little magical bedroom with a mirror, But it's funny, I missed the golden years of musicals by a decade, but I got to work with all of those people, with the Donna McKechnie's. And, the year I moved to New York, Chorus Line moved to the Schubert from downtown in Chicago. And I was in the last seat up on the left for a Chorus Line for $6. I may as well have been in the front row. I thought, I died, whatever. Just the thrill of it. It didn't matter where I saw it from, or standing room for Chicago for $3 to see Gwen Verdon. I thought I was going to have a heart attack when I laid eyes on Gwen Verdon.
Wow.
No matter how many albums you listen to, no matter how many Ed Sullivan shows, there she did come out of the pit with the gin flask and her slip on the piano, and Roxy Hart. And I'm just like this. I really thought I was going to, die. And the other thing, that same weekend, those are the three shows I saw the weekend I moved to New York. The other one was The Wiz. And Stephanie Mills, when she sang When I Think of Home, I Think of a Place Where There's Lower. And I was crying so hard. I remember it like it was yesterday, that I looked at her and I thought to myself, I'm just in my own world. There's a million people there. I don't know anybody in New York, no upper class, like nothing. And I thought to myself, if I don't work here, I don't know what I'll do with my life. It's not like I'm going to be a typist or, it's just, and I had jobs, I sold kids' shoes at Macy's. I served spaghetti at the Spaghetti Works. I worked Christmas help at Tiffany. I worked at Brentano's bookstore, but I was in class. I busted my ass to catch up with what I missed in my education. And I always tell the kids, and I think I might have even said it at your thing, is use those piano practice rooms. Take those classes, because in the real world, that costs a shitload of money.
Yeah. Definitely.
So while you're being educated, and either you have a loan, on your education, or a scholarship, or your parents are helping you out, take advantage of everything. Go and get in that piano room.
Yeah.
And, learning how to read music helped me in my stage management years. Like when I did song and dance, for example, Act 1 was Bernadette. So there's lyrics, but in Act 2, it was all music and double bar repeats and things like that, that Andrew Lloyd Webber had written for variations on Paganini. And you had to read music or you could not call the show. You could crash scenery on a Broadway stage.
Oh my goodness.
So whoever thought that, or speaking Spanish, because my mother was Cuban and my dad was Spanish American, got me to Chile to direct. So you're an amalgam of all of it. And it got put to good use. It got put to really, really good use. And I'm talking a lot. Where are the questions?
Yeah, so two questions in particular. First, this is so inspiring and so wonderful. So I noticed that you said you started directing back in high school. So this is really interesting to me. Oh, in college.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I was bossy, like I was the class
You
president.
really?
I was organized, I made the posters, so when
Yeah,
you're
yeah, yeah.
organized, you have a vision, which I
Right.
think is important for any director. But I think also having acting ability or background and timing and landing lines and stuff, I think you become useful. But the reason I took a directing class is so that I could do a musical, because I was going insane, and I did The Fantastics. It was the first thing I ever directed.
Oh, harp
So
and
imagine
piano.
fast forward that I would direct a production of I Do, meet the boys and do a tribute to them before Harvey Schmidt died. I actually
Oh my
directed
goodness.
the tribute when they got the Oscar Hammerstein Award.
Oh,
So, I
wow.
mean, like, how is this even possible that these things align, And Barbara recorded 3 songs from the Fantastics, and she made a little tape for the boys. And she goes,
Nice.
you didn't cast me, but I sang 3 songs on my record, I mean, imagine Barbra Streisand walks in at 17 or 16 or 15. Like, what the hell do you do with her? You know what I mean?
Right. Wow, that's
I can
great.
totally understand it.
Yeah. So I want to explore that a little bit. Like, first of all, what are your responsibilities as a director? I mean, it sounds like such a huge job. That's part one. And then part two, after we talk about that, I mean, you obviously have superior people skills, right? So I'd like to just explore that a little bit. Like,
well,
what
being
does
a
it
director
take,
is somebody's got to be responsible. Do you know what I'm saying? So, if you hire someone, like sometimes you get hired and they're like, we love you, but don't get too close. We want you, but do it our way. You don't want me, because I'm just a ball of creativity. If you really want a director, otherwise go get an event planner or a stage manager. I'm not interested. If you know what you want, I'm not the guy.
Yeah.
Okay. But if you really want to play like Play-Doh and create something exciting, it's like when Amy Irving came to me with a play, like, I'm not known for plays, I'm known for musicals, but I could see this. I could see it so vividly, A Safe Harbor for Elizabeth Bishop. I don't even read poetry, but
I love her work.
Just got into the story, and it was called A Safe Harbor for Elizabeth Bishop, written by Marta Goisch, who was Brazilian, and it was done in Portuguese. And I said, I've got to go see that production before I say yes, because I got to see that what I see in my mind is very different. And it was. They were playing it for, and and so when you have vision, when I can visualize something, you also have to know your limitations, or things that aren't a good fit. So a couple of examples are like, when I was having fantastic, a time at the Hollywood Bowl, I did Les Mis, I did Guys and Dolls, they offered me Rent. Well, of course I could direct Rent, but who's in it? Bernadette Peters? Like, I'm a glamour puss, you know what I'm saying? So it's not like I need to be cool and direct Rent. Like, hire somebody that fits them like a glove, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or when I see things like Spring Awakening, you just got to give it up. I'm not the guy that has a little novella under my arm meeting with a rock band at midnight. It's not what I do, and I'm a glamour puss.
Right.
So it's very interesting, but I know my lane, and I like my lane a lot. You know what I mean? And I feel comfortable in a TV studio. I feel comfortable in a recording studio, with an orchestra, with the great arrangers and conductors and singers. I feel comfortable on a Broadway stage. I feel comfortable on a movie set, directing. But, somebody's got to be responsible. And if you hire me and you put your faith in me, I will get that horse to the gate. And when you're doing musicals, for example, everybody works at different tempos. It's like racehorses. So if these 3 are doing okay, I'll leave them alone for a couple of days while I get these up to the thing, but they don't realize it, because that's my observation. Do you know what I'm saying?
Right. Sure.
Nobody knows they're a little behind or they're a little ahead. Also, I'm very fearful of, giving too much praise, because then they think they've got it, and you don't want that either. Right. So, there's all that. The people skills is an interesting thing. Everybody works with people that they don't like, or that are difficult, or it's uncomfortable, but you have to win the war. That doesn't mean lying. It doesn't mean conning. It doesn't mean any of that. It means listening a lot, you know what I mean? And then trying to find a place from which to jump off of. Like, even with somebody like a Bernadette Peters, I'll be watching, for example, a song being performed. And I go, Bernadette, can I ask what you're thinking about during this? And she would say, I said, you know what? That makes so much sense, but it's not reading. You've got to find a different way to get it here. And I call that mirror work. Do you know what I mean? Sometimes you think you're getting something across, but it's not. And sometimes it can seem detached or cold. So it's just happening in your mind. Melissa Errico and I would discuss this. I said, you're having some sort of experience of your own that we're not let in on. And so communication which I love. I love actually communicating. But it really is, it's a dialogue. It's a communication. It's a thing, but I love actors. I love them. I love talented actors, and I love playing with talented actors. Somebody like Kristin Chenoweth is so talented, you have to rope her in from herself. Too many things are going on. Focus, because she's always like, I'll land, I'll write a line and it'll be ba-dum-bump, but then she'll ba-dum-bump-bump-bump, and overdo it, and then it's not funny anymore. She keeps layering it. So you pull it back to get a solid land. It's very interesting. It's like Barbara's so great about landing lines, and she's a great storyteller. And, sometimes I just get seduced and forget I'm directing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Same here as our harpist on tour. I would just sit there and listen to her.
And you just, and then you got to shape it to be succinct. You know what I mean? But I love every word. When she and Marty, her longtime manager of over 50 years, when they go back to being the Brooklyn kids sitting there in the living room talking, I go for the ride, and I'm just like, I want to know every word, But then, there's days where you're just singing with her in the room, with Bill or whoever at the piano, or Randy. And all of a sudden she just starts playing with her voice, and Jay and I swoon, like we actually swoon involuntarily, going, woof, And so, and then, she likes it. And some days I'll say, stop showing off, save it. You know what I mean? So, it's all part of the gig. But the thing about me and singers, and if you look at everybody I work with, they're all singing actors. They're actors who sing sublimely. I know what this costs, the throat. I know people they make it look easy. But what goes into making that work is extraordinary. Watching Kristin Chenoweth warm up, watching Bernadette have a voice lesson with Adrian Angel, all these things, even Deborah Cox, who I'm working with, who's a great R&B singer, but she's a great singer. And I love great singers, working with Stokes, working with Norm Lewis and that crazy range mellifluous instrument. I love music. And I know a lot of music, and I know a lot of singers, because my parents used to belong to the Columbia Record Club, so different records would come every month. And I just, Tony Bennett, Stephen Eady, Vic Damone, Jack Jones, Bobby Darin, like, I'm in. Sarah Vaughan, you can't stump me. You just can't.
That's great. I love it. Fantastic. Well, I know that since you've moved here to Miami, you have become active in the local art scene. And first of all, you're on the executive committee, I think, of the equity. Oh, I'm sorry.
Broadway Cares Equity Fund. Yeah, I'm a board member. Yeah. I have been for a long time. But I've had this house for 28 years. I just didn't live here full time till recently.
I didn't realize that.
So I bought this, and I had a home in Los Angeles, and I had a home in New York.
Right, like 40 years, I think.
Yeah, and I lived 2 blocks from World Trade when that happened. And,
oh my goodness.
We rebuilt downtown, and then it just became time, like having 3 houses, wear my black leather pants. This housekeeper calls that one. I'm a little bit of a diva, and so the FedEx bills were pretty big. So I got centered, but I moved 3 houses of clothing, opening night outfits, memorabilia into one place, plus a storage space on the 79th Street Causeway that my friends beg me to go to every time they visit. And I lift the door, and they're like, I don't know, you'd think it's Jumanji or something. I don't know, but they go crazy. And so now I'm at the point where I'm trying to get rid of stuff, and somebody will go, I like that. I just take it off the wall and give it to them, because otherwise, if I'm gone, my brother's going to sell it at a bad garage sale for $75.
Oh no, tragic. So,
but yeah, I'm a board member of Broadway Cares.
Yeah, and you're also locally a director of the Latin Songwriters Hall of Fame, the museum.
Not anymore, but I was for about 4 years.
Okay, fantastic.
Yeah. But that's great with all the Latino artists and being bilingual. Desmond Child reached out to me, and all the Latin artists I got to meet, and even the Vicky Carrs, and all the legends, and so that was fun. But we had a little parting the ways it happens in show business.
Yeah,
and what can you do?
Yeah.
I don't need to go into it.
And I also noticed that you're a big fan of supporting local restaurants, and even during this time, socially distanced when we needed to, and with masks. And I follow you on social media, and I love.
Well, first of all, I love the local theater groups. I go to the Arsht regularly, but it's people like Area Stage, like. All the other theater groups. There's a author here that I'm crazed for named Juan C. Sanchez, and we're working up a project about the Marielitos, which is the story of 6 boys, which has obsessed me, that he has invented out of the situation that I explained my passion for. So that's very, very exciting. And I worked with the symphony and did their Porgy and Bess, the South Florida Symphony. And that was a thrill because one of my first jobs in New York was I was a production assistant for Porgy and Bess, the one that won the Tony with the Houston Grand Opera.
Oh, great.
And Sherman M. Goldman with Clomidale and Donnie Ray Albert. And I went to Europe. It was the first time I went to Paris, to the Opera House. Was it the Opera House? No, we played, where the hell did we play? Anyway, I went with Porgy and Bess, and I was a press agent and I was a company manager. And, you did whatever you had to do to be in the business.
Right.
But I love the local groups. As far as the restaurants and all that stuff, it happened. My friend David Sexton, who lives in Normandy Isle here in North Beach, he's a big advocate for all of that. And they focused on particular restaurants and kept these restaurants alive and building tents for outdoor eating and the florist. And so it has really helped these local, people.
Yeah, it's
and
great.
So that's really good. And a lot of these people have become my friends. My local bar, my watering hole. I never had a local bar before, like Cheers, where they know your name when you walk in. You know what I mean?
Well, I love it because it just underscores how incredibly generous you are. I mean, yes, you're hardworking, you're obviously talented and great with people and everything. You have a heart of gold too. I mean, really, my students were so taken by, all that you shared and your authenticity and your passion.
One of the things that I said to the students, if you'll recall, is, because of the connections you have, right? They're able to meet somebody like me. So let's not waste time with me expounding about myself or trying to lecture. Use me. Right. Ask me what you want to know. How can I be here today as a guest of Laura and, the Frost School of Music? How can I help you do something? Ask me questions, rape me, take advantage of me, because otherwise, what's the point?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? I don't need to talk about myself. You can read plenty about me online. There's plenty of pictures. There's plenty of articles. And there's, a lot of inconclusive Wikipedia. I don't even know who writes Wikipedia.
I know, right?
Like, I didn't do one word of that. Like, where did they get all that? But anyway, the point is to be helpful. And I said to them, I challenged them, I said, don't let me leave this Zoom call without asking me. And then, of course, some of them had real questions. Your stage manager girl, they're worried. They are worried about the future, and you can't guarantee them anything, but I can connect them. And it's all about connecting the dots. And so I am going to spend a half hour with each one. I have all their names and their emails right here and their phone numbers. And I made the list, and I'm going to call them one at a time and just spend a half an hour. You know what I mean? And then a lot of times, I want them to tell their parents they're talking to me so that people don't think they're getting like idiotic information.
Right.
But, to find out if your parents are supportive of what you're doing. Are you a rebel? Did you take out the loan of your life to go to school here? All of these things matter. And it matters that you pay attention because a lot is riding on this. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
And, Frost School of Music is no, tiny event. You know what I'm saying? It's like, I know where the important schools are. And I just reacquainted myself with Frost. As you know, I played with your bass player, with Deborah, and so I saw the campus and the fountain and blah blah blah, and ate in the food hall before the pandemic. And
the real experience.
Chicken wings, I liked them.
Good.
Who doesn't like a good chicken wing and a beer? But it's really, really important. And so I've had my chance. Like, my career is sort of in the rearview mirror. I can work as much or as little as I want. I'm 67 years old, and but now it's really time. I need to be the Jim Sillery to these kids. You know what I mean? The people, and just, and nothing's going to stop them. There's no magic carpet ride. Do you know what I'm saying? But if I can inspire just somebody, the problem is when you help somebody and then they don't know how to keep going and they keep checking in with you, then it becomes a nuisance. Then it's no longer fun. You know what I mean?
Right.
And you haven't helped at all. They've got to think on their feet. You know what I mean? Yeah. And that's up to the rest of the faculty and people who are preparing them, for the world. But, I think it's great that they're being taught by professionals, who have actually gone out there and done it. You actually have world experience, and they're not all good experiences sometimes. And that's important to the equation.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? Like, look what's going on with your union in New York with the health and pension and welfare. And,
Terrible.
We have so many friends in New York, collectively, all of us. And, 48% of our group has left New York. And what I mean by that is if you're a Pilates teacher, but you really want to be a Broadway dancer, if you're a violinist, but you're waiting tables at Joe Allen. So 48% of our tribe has left, and some of them have snuck out in the middle of the night because they couldn't negotiate with their landlords.
Right.
And it's heart-wrenching to see Kodama close. It's heart-wrenching to see, the hotels closed. And I don't know what's going to happen, and I'm not a soothsayer, and I'm plenty sad. But, I particularly think of those kids in Six, which was a new Broadway musical about to open.
Yeah.
And they were in their dressing rooms. Their opening night outfits were hung. The flowers were there. Their parents were in town. And they shut down Broadway at 5:30 on their opening night. And they were all Broadway debuts. I can't even, my head explodes trying to comprehend this.
Yeah, so sad.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, so I'm grateful, at the position I have in life, but there are a lot of people that are not doing so great. And so we got to help them out, and thank God for the Actors Fund and, which helps your union, my union, all of that. But it's very troubling, and so people are getting, somebody like Kristin Chenoweth, who works 28 hours a day, 8 days a week, she's not doing so good, I mean, just like mentally of, like, when does this end? This girl's on concert. She uses the planes from coast to coast like it's a shuttle. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I love her, and I work with her, and we just had a big success on Broadway together. But it's crazy. So my career is still outside of Miami. I still travel the world, as you know. And but we're not traveling. I haven't been on a plane since March. Well, actually, since December when I came back from New York.
Yeah.
So after Norm Lewis's Christmas show. So it's really weird. And I'm usually in the theater 5 nights a week watching stuff and crying, you know what I mean? But I'll tell you, the next time I sit in a theater, I don't know, they're going to have to like wheel me out because my heart I'll probably have a heart attack. It's like
all of us, I think.
Very emotional. And also anybody who loves music, who feels music, because, there are some people that don't. Like I saw Audra McDonald recently with Seth Rudetsky. She did the concert series, and she moved herself to tears a number of times on that Sunday night. And I was crying with her because she hadn't connected the voice and words in a long time.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So she kept choking up, just like connecting and hearing. And even though you're doing it virtually, and I understood it. I just understood it.
Yeah.
When you get back in touch with your instrument.
Yeah, for sure. It's going to be something, and it will happen. We don't know when, but somehow.
Yeah, it's hard. And, the virtual thing is nice, but it gets, and also too many virtual things going on. Like I have a Zoom, like a schedule of, this is on at 7, that one's at 8, Billy Stritch is at 9, it's a lot. It's a lot to be running to the television and getting the YouTube up and, So, and no matter how good or entertaining someone is, it's not the molecules, it's not the droplets that we're supposed to avoid. I want the droplets. I need the droplets back in the environment. You know what I mean? Or the idea that, think about it. Think about Lion King reopening, right? And all those animals coming down the aisles with those people singing at full velocity with people on the aisles. Are they going to restage it? Like, these are all issues that have to be thought out.
Absolutely.
The air conditioning systems, the HVAC, and I have friends who just did the Diana musical, where they were in the bubble, and you probably have some friends also, but they were in, seclusion in Jersey while they rehearsed, and then they went into the Longacre and taped it. So that'll be interesting. It was a deal with Netflix. And so they were in a bubble and getting, swabbed every day. And it's interesting.
Yeah. Well, this has been fantastic. I hate to stop us here, but
all right. But do you have any more questions that I didn't get to? Because I know I talk a lot.
You answered everything. I didn't even have to ask.
Look at that list. Are you sure?
I am sure. No, there's plenty more I could ask you, but this is
all right.
Really
when
great.
do you see your students next?
In a couple of hours.
Oh, great. So let them know that we spoke and that I am going to get to them, because I think I promised them that I would do it last week, but then last week got away from me. So now.
Not a problem. You really have a heart of gold. Thank you so much for all your time.
Thank you very much. I admire you for teaching. My dad always wanted me to be a teacher. I wasn't interested, but this is the way I'm trying to give back a little. But I really do believe they're the future, you know what I mean? And you're at a fantastic school, you know what I mean? So, hopefully I'll be there live soon. That would be my greatest pleasure.
We look forward to that very much.
All right. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your time. Good to see you.
All right. You too. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.